Distinguished guests, MIEBO is celebrating its 10th anniversary. 10 successful years of international trade in different countries. Trade and culture. Are there any relations between culture and trade? The main problem encountering in business relationships between different countries and thus different cultures is that most business people believe that culture does nothing with trade. They say trade is facts and figures, price and service, and no soft skills like culture. But this can result in heavy losses because while hard facts are of course very important, an understanding of the other culture can often be the decisive aspect that other guides in another way. It can be the difference between success and failure. Something is very simple, some cultural differences. For instance, you see this glass. This is typical German. In German, the speaker gets a glass of water. When I was in France, I was very astonished to say, why do you drink water? No one drinks water. You should drink wine. In America, they say, you can hardly speak without drinking, because we also cannot drink. And in China, everyone has a cup of tea and is sipping tea. So these are differences. As president of the Gesellschaft für Deutsch-Chinesische Freundschaft, the so-called German-Chinese Friendship Club, I focus my speech on Chinese partners. In doing so, I consolidate the insights we gathered in the course of a research project involving Chinese and German business people in Shanghai, Dalian, Beijing, and of course in German places. And of course the results of other investigations. And one very famous investigation is cross-cultural intelligence by an American researcher, Richard D. Lewis. And according to Lewis, we can divide the cultures of the world in 3 so-called cultural types. Linear cultures, step by step, that are American cultures and German cultures. Then the so-called multi-active cultures, that is not only brain but also heart. These are Latin American cultures like Chile, and maybe also Italy. And the so-called reactive societies like China. For instance, Iran is between multi-active society and reactive society, according to this research. Let's focus on China. The policy of opening, implemented since about 1980, has brought the result that contacts between Chinese people and foreigners have reached an extent never before in the Chinese history. China now is an open society, and in former times, the Great Wall was not only physical but also mental between Chinese and other people. The Chinese society is now undergoing comprehensive changes on many levels, driven in part by foreign technologies, but also by the ideas behind these technologies. The result is often change in even firmly consolidated values. But a large number of traditional values continue to be important. Why? People want to have a sense of security, especially in sweeping change, in the years of change. According to our research and the results of other researchers, there are 3 important differences between Western culture and Chinese culture. The first topic is harmony. Based on the Confucian system of values, Confucius was a Chinese philosopher. He lived 2,500 years ago, and he is still important today in China. Harmony is a fundamental value. But is this really a typical Chinese value? No one should lose his faith also in Germany. Also in the German culture, ability to find a consensus is an important competence. But on the other hand, Germans like to name differences directly. Deutsch miteinander reden, to speak German, which is the other, means that we are open to say what is wrong or what we think that is wrong by the other partner. Our culture is not a culture of harmony, but a culture of conflict. But we think to speak open about conflicts is a better way to solve problems. The Chinese say harmony is a better way. So you see the differences. So if you start relationships with Chinese partners, it's very interesting the second day. The German will open the session saying, yesterday we had a good session, and today we have to solve the following problems. 1, first, second, third. The Chinese partner will open the session saying, yesterday we had a wonderful meeting. We had a meeting in harmony, and we are now living in a harmonious way and continuing our negotiations. There may be some small problems, but we are very sure to solve them. That's the difference. The next is a group and the individual. So first was harmony, second is group and individual. In China, a group is much more important than the individual. Negotiations are initially conducted by the representatives of the lower levels of ranking. But despite any differences in rank, and in China, hierarchy is very important. First secretary, second secretary, third secretary, even the family life. The older brother is more important than the younger brother, and the younger sister, of course, is last. Despite any difference of rank, all members of the negotiating delegation belong to the same group. The ideology of harmony within the group often causes the individual to be afraid to make any decision. Many German businessmen therefore consider negotiations unnecessarily long-timed. They say they discuss and discuss and discuss again. They make no decision. Why? Chinese people like to bring harmony into the result. So they discussed as long as everyone agreed, and this needs time. So if you go to China, never say, I'm very sure next week we have unsuccessful. But the Chinese will say, okay, he has no time, that's very good for us. And then end he will write down what we tell him. When they ask you, don't say, I have a ticket for next Monday, so I say, well, my family thinks I should be back at Christmas. And then they will see, okay, you have enough time. You know the rules. Then at the end, all members of the group, Chinese group, after the discussion agree the result. And that may be the difference. Because in the German delegation, it may be that one member of the delegation says, the boss has decided, it was not my opinion. And therefore, it's a good way for Chinese to make decisions. The third is the personal relationship. There is a special word in China, it's called guanxi. And guanxi is, I think it's the most important term in Chinese society. In China, as in Germany, and as all over the world, of course, law is important. In business cooperation, you can rely and you can trust on contracts. But from historical reasons, the observation of official law is more established in Germany. In China now a fundamental change is in progress. In the last decades, an elaborate legal system was established, which to a certain degree incorporated foreign experience, because the Chinese found out this relying on law is successful also for the Chinese counterpart. But still, at the moment, the German custom says about 80% of all fakes in the world are made from China. Because the Chinese said that is a law, but the law is not so strictly, and we can see. So if you are working with Chinese businessmen, try to build up a personal relationship. Because for the Chinese, personal relationship is much more important than all other relationships, all formal relationships. So if you send a group to China and you send go next time to China, take the same members of the group. Because the Chinese say, they always change the members of the groups. They think it's successful, and we think they don't want to trust it. They don't want to trust us. And we don't trust him. So build up a personal relationships, this is important. So we have harmony, group, and Guangxi. Personal relations is very important in China. This is only a short experience. So we can summarize, culture is important. But there's a new problem. Culture is not static. Culture is changing. And for our foreign guests, it may be interesting to see, even in Germany, culture is changing. It's changing very fast. Because the most fascinating and at the same time the most difficult thing is faced on intercultural competences is the fact that every culture is constantly in a movement. We can see this at the moment in the Chinese culture, which can be adopted which has adopted numerous elements of Western culture, above all American culture, not so much German culture. This was promoted by the simple fact that it has also proven positive for Chinese companies, not only adopt the technology, but also the ideas behind the technology. And I want to show you some aspects of the changing German culture. Just 50 years, 1964, 2014. The first is gender equality. In 1964, a husband was allowed by law to tell his wife, you have to stay at home. I don't like you to go to work. And by law, the wife has to say, I agree. Of course, in reality, this was never the way. But now, even by law, and in reality, nearly all of our wives are working. And remember the government. Until 1990, in the government, there was one female minister. This was the Minister of Family Affairs. Because the people thought a lady only knows family affairs, not so complicated things like economy or such a thing. As you know, nowadays, our most important politician is a lady, and as time says, Angela Merkel is the most successful and most important woman in the world. I don't know if this is true, but she is important. And nowadays we have a female minister who decides how much money we spend on social welfare, how we do the minimum wage or such a thing. And at the moment, even the Minister of Defense is a lady. So this is a totally change. The next big change is we have more tolerance. In 1960, you were said, you go to this place, you have to dress this clothes, this dress. There was a dress code for every event. We had even a special language, so we have a language for students and a language for the middle class and the upper class, not as the same system as in England, where it's really strict languages, barriers. But we have different languages. Nowadays, even very important political person can say Scheiße and this is shit. And no one will say, oh, she should leave her position or his position. We can do this now. We are a more open-minded society. The third is we are much more international. The first group coming to Germany was the so-called guest workers. They were people from Italy, also from a European country, and from Turkey, so much more strange. But the guest workers, they were said, you are only guests here. You come here, you work, you go back. But they stayed, and this changed society very much. You can see it by the cuisine. You are in Würzburg now. If you want to go to Würzburg to have Fränkische Küche, Franconian cuisine, it's really difficult. It's difficult to find a typical German restaurant. If you walk through the streets, you will find an Italian restaurant, of course a Chinese restaurant, an Iranian restaurant also, yes, and of course Döner, Turkish restaurants. So the cuisine has also changed more internationally. And one thing is we have much more openness towards new things. The importance of tradition has declined. It is not becoming insignificant. This has been illustrated by the former differences with the culture. But we are joining an international trend which has nearly every country now. We are fond of new things. When I was in England 50 years ago, they were very proud to say, we show you this machine, this engine. And this engine is working since 100 years. Nowadays, the same person will say, this is our most modern machine, engine. Of course, no one would be proud to have an old engine. This is changing. In China, in Iran, in Chile, in Germany, we are writing in a new society. Only 3 terms: smartphone, Facebook, Wikipedia is international. So, the fact that MIEBO and its international partners can celebrate the company's 10th anniversary today demonstrates that MIEBO, under the leadership of where he is Diplom-Ingenieur Hans-Joachim Göpfert, exhibits international competency and also intercultural competency. The company's international touch is also evident from the fact that the team includes a Chinese member. Where she is? Wei Yi. Oh, yeah. So Wei Yi will also promote the intercultural understanding, and therefore it's good, not only trade, not only money, but also feelings, intercultural understanding, and I think that is very much. Thank you.